Good afternoon, happy Easter, and welcome to Check the Gate. I am Chen Reiss, and in my opera lounge today, I am delighted to host a dear colleague and one of the most successful singers internationally for the past 30 years, German-Canadian star tenor Michael Schade. Michael will join us shortly for a live talk. Hello, Michael. Are you with me?
Oh my God, I'm on.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank you, of course.
All right,
Well,
I guess that makes me a dinosaur right away.
no,
How
absolutely
embarrassing
not.
is this? Hello,
Absolutely
everyone.
not. D is the best. Is the best, isn't she? The best.
She is very much the best. Hello, I do apologize about being late.
Don't worry about
I
it.
will confess something right away, Ken.
Yeah.
So, hello, first of all, happy
Hi.
Easter, happy Passover,
Thank you.
and a great day from Vienna here. I have finally gotten to the age where, so for instance, this jacket and this little, the little red, the little red in here is all because my wife buys my clothes because I'm old enough to admit it.
That's not true.
Hi, G.
Let me tell all the singers out there, because you will have problems and face realities you can't think of right now. But I want you to know that there are no problems, only solutions waiting to be found. So don't run away from problems, don't run away from relationships. Solution.
And she knows because she's a mother of 8. I don't know how you do it, but you are amazing, the two of you. So,
Hello.
Michelle, it's really rare to find you at home at Easter time because you are the evangelist of our time. Do you remember the first time that you sang Matthäus Passion or Johannes Passion?
Oh, I remember it very well. The Matthäus Passion and the Johannes Passion are singing the evangelist was something that, some people may know that my father was a great hobby singer, but he loved Schubert and Bach above everything else. And I do remember singing the Johannes Passion first as the aria tenor with my friend Howard Dick in Canada, who is a great conductor, was a great personality on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation as well. And there was a guy called David Gordon who sang the evangelist. And I remember walking up to Howard saying, "Do you think I could do this one day?" And he said, "Michael, before you know it, you'll be doing it." And it's one of those things that I then got to study with one of my great mentors, Helmut Rehling. And later, of course, I got to do it with lots of others, including the great and wonderful Nicholas Hanukor.
Yeah, with whom you had sort of a long relationship. You sang a lot of roles with him. You also recorded a lot of different pieces with him. Do you remember the first time that you worked with him? How was it, the first meeting?
Well, there's a difference between the first meeting and the first time I worked with him. The first thing I did get to do with him were the Seven Last Words of Christ by Haydn in the Musikverein. And all I can tell you about that particular concert is that I felt a real sense of a point of arrival, in the sense that he embodied and still embodies very much the ideal between a great artist and a great man. Not, God is a great jokester, and not all great artists are great people. With all due respect to many whom I've met, and I've met many who are both, but he was really the epitome of somebody who was as great a person as he was a musician, and that is an incredible gift to meet someone like that. In many ways, a saint. Even though he was certainly not somebody who didn't have an opinion and who didn't want to challenge you every single time. In fact, challenge himself. I don't know how many times I would do something, and I would say we'd be doing it again, like the creation, and I would sing, and he'd say, "No, no, please, not like that." And I said, "I'm trying to do something that I wrote down that we did the last time." He said, "Who did you do this with last?" And I said, "You." He said, "That is terrible. That is absolutely a terrible idea." And and I said, "But Nicholas, you said it. We always need to study. We always need to study. We always need to research." And he always made music um, happen like it was just off the print.
Yeah.
And the very first time I met him is a moment where he and Alice looked at me and said, "We have no time, we have no time, we have no time." And I flew all the way to Amsterdam just to be with him. And you know, my husband does everything not like you think, not like you think it goes. It has to be a certain way, and it has to be only his way, and you have to be adaptable. And I said, "Well, that's why I'm here." And I auditioned for them, and 9 months later only was I able to even get another call. And it was a beautiful, beautiful. I believe it was 17 years of my life. I
Wow.
came to him later than many others, but oh boy, he's very dear to me.
Wow. 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 Amazing. And Michael, um, today, in addition to being very, very busy as a tenor around the world, you are also the artistic director of the International Barocktage Stift Melk in Austria. And unfortunately, this spring, the festival will not take place.
Mm.
I suppose this is very, very sad for you as an artistic director and as a singer.
Well, Ken, it's not only sad for all of us. You and I are sitting here not by choice. Sometimes I compare it to, when you're freelancing, there's a big rule, which is that you should always try, if at all possible, and it's not always possible, uh, to think ahead such that if you have an accident, that you're covered for 2, 3 months ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And while that is a very noble idea and a very good idea, it's not always possible. But we are, in a way, it's like all of the singers and all of the opera houses of the world have, all the singers have broken a leg and have to take 2, 3 months off. And not only that, but it feels like all the houses have all been damaged, and all the houses have all been um, shot because they have been. And it's a very scary time. And so we try to do something a little different in Melk. I was very much inspired both by the European Soccer Championship and the Olympics in the sense that they are moved forward. And that gave me
Yeah.
great, great hope, you see. And I felt that the biggest thing we can give people right now is hope. And I too, I'm supposed to be in Toronto right now,
Mm-hmm.
and to sing the Flying Dutchman. And I got a call from Alexandre Neff, or Alexandre Neff, as they will call him in Paris. He's still the head of the Canadian Opera Company and will soon become the head of the Paris Opera. And he talked to me personally for 40 minutes. This is a man
Wow.
who's running the Paris Opera already, and he's running
Yes.
the Canadian Opera Company. He has a whole cast of Aida sitting in Toronto who are stuck there because they were rehearsing, and suddenly this pandemic hit. For him to talk to me for 40 minutes and to give me not only comfort, in the end, they also ended up helping us financially a little bit. A little bit counts a lot these days. He gave me something that I will
Yes.
never forget. He gave me hope and a vision for the future. And I immediately called my team together from Melk, and we said we have to do something different. And what we did is because by law you cannot cancel until, especially if you're getting government grants and so on, you cannot cancel until the government says it's over. You have to
Mm-hmm.
do it differently, which is why we said we were going to, in a way, not to circumvent it, which we did, but what we did is we called every one of our artists and we said, look, the writing is on the wall. We want to help you. And the only thing I can give you right now is hope for the future.
Yeah.
And tell me what you're doing in 2 years, because we'd like to take all of this that you've invested and we'd like you to come to Melk in 2 years. And we're talking about, fantastic acts like the Tallis Scholars, the Concentus Musicus, our residence orchestra. We're talking about incredible acts and performers, and they all said we'd love to come. And by the grace of God, 96% of the original program it was salvageable. And for those that needed money right today, we said we will give you money. Please sign for 2022, and we'll make it count towards that time. And if that by that time things are still difficult, we'll talk. And if you've spent money trying to get to us, bought tickets that we cannot help you with, we've helped them. But the biggest gift I can give as an artistic director is to give someone hope for the future, because that's the best it's going to get today.
Yeah, Michel, that's really incredible what you did. I think it's wonderful, and I hope that other festivals and opera houses will follow in your steps. And
well,
you're
there's been so many of our friends, Chen, that have received the bad news that things are canceled. Things that you don't just go because it's a performance, even if it is performance of Zauberflöte. In my case, it would be 243. But I worked the whole year to come and sing. Finally, the Canadian Opera Company's Eric in the Flying Dutchman. I prepared this for years, and for it to go away is also an emotional hurdle to get over. Yeah. Beside the fact that you lose an income, but the point is, people invest so much time and effort into their work, as we do, trying to organize them to come, that it's very important to give people a sense of a future, because a lot of practicing has gone into this and a lot of hope.
And Michel, you actually mentioned the Flying Dutchman, and it brings me to my next question to you. So you started, I believe, as a Mozart tenor, the Mozart tenor, and you sang a lot of oratorios, Haydn, Bach, Handel. But quite early on, if I'm not mistaken, you also tried and you sang successfully some Wagner roles, like David. You sang Matteo, Strauss roles. I heard you singing here in Vienna the Prince in Rusalka, which was gorgeous. And these roles require much more volume. So is it a different approach to singing? Is it a different Fach? Yet you always go back to your Mozart. I mean, we did together Idomeneo and Tito. And one of my favorite arias that you sing is Dalla sua pace. For me, you're still singing it with this immaculate breath control and precision and wonderful intonation. So how do you juggle? In 1 week, you sing Wagner and Mozart. How do you do that?
And thank you for your words, first of all. There's two rules about singing that I follow to the T. And the very first rule I learned from one of my first managers, and also from particularly my very first teacher, Marlena Malas, who's taught so many wonderful singers. And a voice is always to sound beautiful. So there's nothing Olympic or pushed or driven about a voice. It's not something that you can just drive into submission, because even if you have a voice like our late friend Johann Botha, who by the way was, or Ben Hefner, both incredible tenors in my case, who were just lyric, even though they sang the world's biggest repertoire. The key is to keep it lyrical, to keep it beautiful. If your voice ends up hurting at the end of this session, then you've done something wrong. Mm-hmm. And then there is a certain edge where you shouldn't go beyond. However, one of my great mentors was a friend of mine whom I sang David to his Stotzing many times. He was a hero. His name was Gösta Wingberg. He was a Swedish tenor who actually died sadly after performance of Fidelio, a role I now sing at the Wiener Staatsoper. And he died in one of Placido's apartments.
Wow.
He just didn't wake up one night. We didn't know. He didn't really know that he had a heart condition. And yes, there's a bit more muscle to the voice. when you sing some of these Strauss operas and some, and I only really sing very lyrical Wagner operas, and I at best one of these we have titles, and it's called a Zwischenfachtenor. So it's like sort of a little bit of everything, but I am and will remain and would like very much to be buried a Mozart tenor. The other rule, besides just the fact that you always have to sound lyrical, is to make sure that when you take a step back, that you can still do it. And when you cannot do that anymore, that's when you have a real problem. And that's when you need to fix things. So when I just did a mere 4 weeks ago, a run of my first Eric's in Eric. I want to translate in German, but his name is still Eric. In the Flying Dutchman in Hamburg, I came back to the Musikverein and we had performances of Salomon or Salomon by Handel. And those who know that it's filled with coloratura, filled with lightness and joy. And I'm glad to report, as someone who's gotten to do a lot of things, that some of the best reviews I've had in my life were those two runs, both the Salomon and before that the Wagner. And whenever I did the Wagner, I said I need to be able to come back and do the Salomon. And if I can't do that, I'll quit. And if I quit ever doing one, I would always come back to the light one. But so far so good, and I have never been someone that looks at life, as in terms of a tenor's repertoire. I've never looked at it like life is as an advent calendar. An advent calendar, as we all know, in life, has these little doors that go up to 24, and then wann ist endlich Weihnachten, And my life has never been such that wie viel Türen noch bis Lohengrin. If it comes, when it comes, you dabble at it a little bit, because Gösta told me you have to train a little bit towards this, and that's why I did my first Lied von der Erde, and I do this a lot. But I do it my way, and it's of course a matter of taste. But I have great heroes, and look at the people who, that's actually rule number 3, is to look who was before you. So Anton Dermotter and Patzak and all these great singers, and it was possible, and it is possible to sing lyrically always, because even a Johann Botha and even a Ben Heppner, it would be possible very easily with a terrible conductor and a terrible orchestra to ground them into submission, and it's very easy to cover a sound. This is why there's some great conductors and some great opera houses versus places that aspire to be that.
Yeah. Yes. And Michael, knowing you, I know you must be learning something at the moment. Tell us. Oh, wow. Schade. Wow.
By Korngold, and typical Schade, I'm also learning, look at this. Here. All these wonderful, can you see that?
Yes.
There's John Dowland songs.
Okay.
And wonderful songs by Purcell. So
again,
sorry.
Purcell and Korngold.
Korngold, Purcell, and Dowland. Why? Because all my life, I was already made fun of it when I was studying at the Curtis Institute of Music. I didn't just come to master classes with opera arias. I came with Lieder, and I came with oratorio, because that's rule number 4, is don't just do opera, don't just do Lieder, and don't just do oratorio. Try to combine it all, because they're 3 cousins, opera, oratorio, and Lied. They're 3 cousins, and they all learn from each other. And if you know how to do that, then you can sing David in die Meistersinger, because that's what he does. He talks about die vielen Weisen, in other words, the rules of engagement for great singing. So
I bet that this is one of the tips that you give your students, because you are also a professor at the Musikuniversität. I don't know how you manage to do everything.
Chen, it's really, life is very beautiful. There's lessons to be learned in this crisis, but life is also, I keep saying life is like, if you're lucky, life is like an Esterhazy torte, it's of many layers. Now, and at the end of life, or as you go through life, the most important things in life you reduce down like a great fine sauce in cooking, and you get the essence of things. I have always liked young singers. I was once a young singer, and I've always been helped. And one of my big things, including being the creative director of the Young Singers Project at the Salzburg Festival, of the Stella Maris International Vocal Competition, of our own Johann Schmelzer Wettbewerb, and even my job as artistic director of the Barocktage Merck has to do with helping young people. And so it was a logical extension that I first did a staged così that I did at the MDW. I did it at the Tel Aviv Summer Opera.
Yes.
I did a Don Giovanni, and I also did a Monteverdi project. And through those things, I eventually became a professor of historical performance practice, historische Aufführungspraxis, at what will be new faculty next year at the MDW, at the Musikuniversität Wien. It's one of the greatest joys, and I really thought, oh boy, if I start teaching now, perhaps people will start to think that Schade is slowing down. And it was one of those many things that I added to that great Esterhazy cake of life. And I thought, oh, I hope I do everything justice, but like a great fine sauce, the message to the young people has become ever more important. Not that I want to stop singing. In fact, one of the reasons that the university asked me is because I am singing and I am doing so much. But it is ever important to teach young people, and it's great fun to for instance, to talk about the evangelist and to talk about the great oratorios and Lieder, and also about the great operas out there, because there's only two kinds of singing: good, lyrical, or bad.
Absolutely. Michel, before we say goodbye,
Yes.
Would you sing something for us, please?
You know, I've thought about this so hard and so long, and I think there was even an option to perhaps read a poem and all that, which
Okay.
sounded really good. But you know what? I'm going to do something that I do for my children, whom I miss partially terribly because they are in Canada. And my littlest one, I need to share something private as well, if I may. We've been terribly scared this week because we've been in contact with a dear doctor friend who has the coronavirus and has COVID, has a COVID infection. And this whole week we really thought that Dee had this infection, and our littlest girl was terribly worried. And it turns out at 4 o'clock this afternoon, we just heard the news that Dee is actually fine, which means that most of us are fine. It also means that someone who has been fine all along is not made of kryptonite. But what I want to share is something soothing to the world, and I hope it works. Yeah, I'll walk out of my office here, and it's a text by Matthias Claudius, and it's a German, a very simple evening song as we head towards the evening here. It's called Der Mond ist aufgegangen. Claudius was used by Schubert, for instance, for An einer Quelle oder Der Tod und das Mädchen. So it's very beautiful. But you know this is very simple. Der Mond ist aufgegangen, die goldenen Sternlein klangen am Himmel hell und klar. Der Wald steht schwarz und schweiget, und aus den Wiesen steiget der weiße Nebel wunderbar. So legt euch hin, ihr Brüder, in Gottes Namen nieder. Abend beschützt uns Gott mit Straß, uns ruhig schlafen I wish everyone the joy of Easter, the safety of Passover. May this pass you by, and you could go and stay healthy, and we will sing again, my dear friend.
Michael, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful song. It's absolutely gorgeous. I have tears in my eyes.
And I can't wait to see you again.
I can't hear you very well. 1 second.
I can't wait to hear you again. To sing. Sorry, look at this. The
Now,
old dinosaur. Here we go. I can't wait to see you again, to hear you again. The world needs to hear you, and I am one of your biggest fans, and I can't wait to share the stage, hopefully again with you soon.
I know.
In the meantime, my friends, stay healthy. We'll get